All right, we're back. It's COMP123, summer 2016 at Centennial, and it's week 10, part 4 of our broadcast for Programming 2. We just finished talking about some multi-form applications we can build. That's what we've been doing here. And we've also talking about a timer event that we can handle. All right. I also want you to think about that, and again, this is just, we just made a silly Pokemon Go image just appear in our splash screen. I want you to think of something else. If I want to exit the application, my exit button itself, the exit button inside my form, so if I go back to my form 1, designer, and if I click on this control box is part of my form, right? My control box. My control box has its own event methods that are happening, right? So if I want to respond to an event method as part of a control box, notice that I have other applications I have here, right? This is for my form. Is there some kind of object that I can do? So here's my control remove, cursor change, deactivate, dock change, double click. These are all the different form events that I can do. My color change on my background, you know, all these things. My drag drop event, drag over, enable change, if I enable disable, for color, form closed, form closing, all that kind of stuff, right? Okay. So let's think about it this way. If I click my X button on my form, right? And right now it doesn't do anything, but it actually does trigger something. It does trigger my form to close. Remember, my form doesn't get destroyed, it just closes, right? Hiding and closing are very similar in that if my form has been triggered by the application run, when I click form close, it closes my application. But if my application has been triggered by another way, for example, my splash screen triggers my application to show, and it's already been instantiated, right? My form closing event doesn't close my application. It just closes my form. So let's see this. So here's form close. My form is closed, right? So when my form is closed or my form is closing, my form closed, here's my form closed event. So my form 1 closed is closed. What I want to do is I want to exit my application. Let's try this out. So I want to say, well, if that's true, then my application dot exit. Right? Let's see if that works. Right? So I'm going to start this off. And I start off with my splash screen because that's the first screen I've told it to start off with. Here's my Pokemon Go app. It opens up my form 1. Right? There it is. And when I close the X button now, right, my whole application stops. Why? Because my form closed event triggered. When I click the X button, my form closed event, it triggers for my form, right? That's what it does. That's what that X does, okay? So there's a couple ways to do that. I can make it so that when you click the X, my form closes. Or when I can make it when you click the X, it could ask you, it could pop up a message that says, do you want to exit? You know, and if it exits, if you say yes, right, then it'll close the form, right? Otherwise, it'll just hide the form, right? And you can bring it up, or maybe it don't do anything. It'll just, when you click the X button, it just shows the form again. It just, you know, opens it up, right? Let's try this out. So when my form is closing, not closed, when my form is closing, the event, when it's triggered, and again, if you look at the events that I can do with my form event, so here's my form. Right now, my form closed is what I'm doing, right? My form closed. There's also an open, so my form opens or loads, right? Painted. There's all kinds of other events that go on, right? That I can trigger. Scroll, you know, size changed, all kinds of other stuff that I can do. Text change, blah blah. But what I wanted to do is say, as soon as my form is closing, I want you to trigger that event. It hasn't closed yet. It's closing. I've triggered the closing event. And there's 2 different events here. One is my form closed event, and the other one is my closing event. All right, so let's remove this event handler for a second, just so that it doesn't trigger the closed event from happening. Okay, there it is, form closing. I want to double click on my form closing event instead. We've got my form closed event here for a second. I'm just leaving it there. I want to bring up something called a message box. All right. And message boxes have, it's interesting. So if I go message box, here's my message box. Again, right now, my message box is an object. Can I do show? Well, because it's a static object, I can use show, and I can ask the dialog box, right? There's a couple of constructors. If you notice, there's quite a few. One of them is I can show a text, a string, some caption, from a message box. I could ask for message box buttons, right? So message box buttons, the OK button as an example, right? Or the OK or cancel button, right? There we go. Different captions, a different icon I can put in here, right? I can do a lot of different things with my message box altogether. Let's try a simple message box right now that just shows, whoa, what are you doing? So I'll say, what are you doing? What are you doing? Right? It's going to come up right now. This is on form closing, not form closed. So it hasn't closed yet, hasn't got to the closed event, hasn't gotten here yet, right? And then it's just going to say, what are you doing? Message box that shows what are you doing. First of all, let's see what happens, right? Does it even come up? And will it come up and go away? So right click, do the event, comes up. Now it's not going to be triggered until I click this button, right? If I click the button, it says, what are you doing? Now here's what happens. Once I make the button come up that says, what are you doing? This message box is something called a modal window, modal, M-O-D-A-L. Because it's a modal window that comes up, it's going to stop anything else from happening until you press OK, right? When you press OK, it's going to continue to close. It's going to do the rest of the thing. So I say, what are you doing? Press OK. Bam, it closes away, right? Okay. It doesn't close my application. It just completes the close sequence. It closes up the window, so you can't see it anymore. It doesn't paint the window anymore. Stop. Yes.
The timer also will stop.
Yes. Everything will stop. If you bring up a message, it'll stop. If the timer triggers the message that comes up, it'll wait until. Actually, the timer might continue to go. You might see other things happening at the same time. Timers are weird. Timers happen asynchronously, so don't do that way. No. All right. So what are you doing? There's no box, and the default came up with a box. But if I go comma, and if I do like message box buttons, right? Message box buttons. It's actually a enumeration. If I go dot, and if I want to choose something like OK cancel, right? Message box buttons, OK cancel, right? Or do you want to close the button? Yes, no, right? OK cancel is pretty much the one we do, right? OK cancel. All right, are you sure you want to close? Is what we should probably answer. Are you sure you want to close? If are you sure, right? Message box buttons, OK cancel, right? How come it's giving me an error? It says specifies constants, argument cannot convert from system Windows forms message box buttons to string, right? Well, the reason why is I'm trying to use a constructor, and what I want to do is if I just do this, let me just show you something for a second. So let me just take this off one more second here. So I'll cut this out, save, and let's run this one more time, right? So I just says, are you sure? Hold on. We'll speed this up so it doesn't show like 5 seconds because it's driving me crazy. Okay, notice that there's no caption up here. It just says, are you sure? All right? So the next one would be the caption, and maybe the caption is going to say something like Windows closing. So Windows, or exit. Maybe the caption is going to say exit. Then comma, you notice that there's the next one is, so there's two things. Are you sure? Right? My string, my caption, and then my message box buttons. Well, there's different ways of doing this thing. There it is. And now my message box buttons. Now this, what it's going to do is actually going to return, it returns a result, a dialog result. That's what it actually does, right? So this thing does return something, but I'm choosing to ignore the return type right now. OK, cancel. Even if I press cancel, see what happens, right? So it's going to show me two buttons. It's going to show the exit as a title, and I forgot to stop the Pokemon Go. Hold on a second. So in here, instead of it going for instead of this thing going for a bunch of seconds, I'm going to pin this one up for a second. I'm going to make it so that the splash timer is going to finish in like 1 second. This is going to be a little faster for us. We're going to see it, but it's going to disappear really quickly, right? So let's see how that works. Boom, boom, boom. There, 1, go. It's going to do the form. And then when I click the X button, it's going to say, are you sure, right? If I press cancel or OK, it's still going to close because I haven't responded to the event, right? This returns something called the dialog result, right? Like I said, let's close some of these up so I don't need them anymore, right? In my form 1, it returns a dialog result, right? My dialog result, right now, there is no object with a dialog result. So I could do something like this. Dialog result, right? I could make an option like this, dialog result. I'll call it result, right? And I could say something like this, just make it in 2 lines so you can see it. I could have done it in 1 line, by the way. I could say result is equal to message box show, OK, cancel, right? And then if my result is positive, right, it's going to return something, or a positive or a negative value, right? So if I say OK, cancel, notice it says either 1 or what's the other one, right? I could write the result to my debug screen. Remember we did this before. I could say something like this. I could say debug write line. Remember, I got to enable my debug again, and I'll pass in result to see what I get, right? And again, to get my debug working, I got to go control dot to add in using system diagnostics in order for me to get that debug class working. Otherwise, it won't work, right? So debug.write line result. I want to take the result and show me what I'm getting when I press one or the other buttons, right? Let's see what I get. So I'm going to start writing this thing. So messagebox.show actually returns something, a number. Because if I press OK or cancel, I want to be able to respond to those buttons. I want to know which button was pressed. If I press OK, go ahead, close, right? If I press cancel, right, then I want to do something else. All right, let's try this out. So I want to stop the form closing event from happening. How do I stop the form closing event from happening? That's another question you got to ask yourself, right? All right, so let's do this. So I'm going to kind of go start. It's going to go away. Click this button. Press the cancel button, and let's see what I get. Cancel. So I don't get a result. I get actually a cancel, right? Like an actual, it produces something for me, right? Well, if that's true, then I can test for it. If I can say something like this, if result.cancel, I go equals to or compares to, I want to do the cancel result, right? How do I do that? So if result is equal to, right, if I can I do this to dialog result.cancel? That's the way to do it, right? If that's true, then what do I want to do? I don't want this form closing event to happen. I don't want my form closed. I don't want it to continue. So how do I stop that? Right? So, well, I could try and do something like this, this .show, right? I could do that, right? But that's not going to stop anything. I'll show you what this does. So yeah, okay, I don't want to cancel. I don't want to close my window, right? I don't want to close my event, and so I want to show my stuff. Okay, so see if this works. Well, are you sure? Cancel, and still gone, right? Because it's going to close. Is there another event that I could capture when my button is clicked, so it's not the form closing event? I'm not in that sequence yet, right? So again, stop form closing C#, right? And then the form closing event, it'll tell you what it does. It says the closing event is obsolete in the .NET Framework version 2. Form closing event instead. Form closing is what I want. Let's choose the form with the wrong one. There it is. Okay. So here it is. So I'm in this form closing event right here, right? And here's exactly what I'm doing. My message box CS is a new message box. Here it is. There's the message box that comes up. Show, and then toString, my form closing event. So it's going to show me what I'm doing. Close, reason, and cancel. I'm doing that, and it's going to continue to close. But how do I prevent this form closing from it to happen, right? My form closing event occurs before the form is closed, all right? Let's go back. So here's one, form closing, var window, message box, right? Close the window, buttons, message box yes or message box no. If window dialog result is no, e.cancel is equal to true. So what is this happening? This E is part of the event that I've clicked, right? E.cancel is equal to true, right, is what I want to do. E is the event that I've triggered, right? So if I go down to here, this event that I'm triggering here that's inside my form closing argument, I could say that's what I want to stop. I want to say my E.cancel is equal to true, right? And that'll cancel my event. Otherwise, if it's something else, if it's okay, right? If it's true, it's going to close my stuff, and it's going to go to application exit. Let's make my application exit properly now. That's why I've left this thing here, form 1, form closed, right? Because I'm intending to close the form up. So let me go back to form 1, right? And I'm going to go back to my properties, and we can see that my form 1 closed event. This is where my form 1 closed is. I'm going to pull down my form 1 closed event. It's already there. I just didn't take it away. I'm just pointing to it again, right? So now I've enabled that event again from triggering, right? And now I'm going to run it. Let's see what happens. So I go here, I click the button, and it says, "Are you sure?" Right? And if I press OK, it's going to close off the event. Close off the whole window. However, if I go back, right, I close off this thing and I press cancel, nothing happens. This is critical. I want to let you know to have some kind of confirmation of closing your application in your event. In the case that you don't want to lose your data, right? Especially if you're asking, kind of triggering a form. So if I can have all my forms trigger the close event, every single form that I make, but I have to have that same logic in every single form. Are you sure? Right? And some forms will do things like, do you want to save? It'll trigger, okay, you're sure you want to close. Cool. I'm okay. I'm holding everything for you. I'm waiting before we're closing. Do you want to save your work, right, before closing? We can do that too. All right, so I've given you more because I want to give you more control. That's what I'm showing you here, right? Let's pass data from one form to the other, and then I'll let you guys go because I think it's important. Then we'll do dialogue, some other stuff we're going to do with the dialogue later on. Are you sure? Yes, I am sure. All right, so how do I pass data? Well, each form is a class, right? So if each form is a class, so I go to my Solution Explorer, and if I look at my forms, I got form 1, form 2, who cares what they're called right now? It's my splash screen form, which I'm just trying to give you the bonuses for your application, for your BMI calculator. That's why I made this for you, right? This is cool, right? But what I want to do is, I want my form 1 to have a little bit more power. Maybe we'll make it so it's form 2, so we can go to form 2 with my next button. Sure, let's make it form 2. Form 2, you know what? Let's add a couple things here. One is, I want some kind of way of transferring from form 1 data to form 2. Maybe my name. So let's make a couple things in form 1. Form 1, I'm going to add a couple of objects, my toolbox. We'll call this my username or my first name, and we'll put a label in there as well. So here's my label. We'll drag in a label, and we'll drag in a text box. Here's my text box. So my label, my text box. And in my label, I'm going to put in, this is going to be my name label, right? And it's going to have a, I'm going to change the font size again to make it big. So we'll make it 20, and so it's really big so you guys can see it. That's why I'm making it so big. In real life, you may not want to make it 20. Right? I'm just making it 20 so that way you can see. And I'm doing it per control this time around as opposed to the form, and there's a reason for that. 20, and then listen to sans. Oh, there we go. All right, and let's stretch this out so it's the whole size, and this one here will be The name of my form over here will be your name, and then this will be the name text box. Name text box, name text box. Okay, cool. Here's my name text box, and here's my name. And then what I want to do is I want to say, when the next form, in form 2, when I go to form 2, I want to, sorry, in my form 2 designer, I want to grab my toolbox. I'm going to have the same kind of thing. I want to have a couple of other objects here, except this time I'll just make them labels. So I'll make this label come up alive. We'll make it so that it's really, really big. So my font size is going to be, again, like 20 or 30. Make it really big. I'll make it 20. I'll type in and listen to. Okay, and we'll make it so that this label is hugging the left-hand side, right? And so it's at the top, right? So whatever I type, this label here, we'll just call it. We'll call the same name, name label. Why can I call it the same name? Because actually it's another label, right? I'm going to put it inside down here just for some stub text. Your name goes here. Your name goes here. Really big. Actually, your name here. Here we go. Your name here. So we shouldn't say your name here. What I wanted to do is when I click the name, whatever it is, right, in form 1, whatever I put in here, and I click next, whenever I've done that, when I click the next button, it's going to take this information and put it into the name label from form 2. That's what I want it to do. The form 2 is not going to pull from form 1. Form 1 is going to push to form 2 because I'm going next, right? And it's beautifully inside the next button. So here's my next button. And notice it just says button 1, right? We're going to rename this thing. And we're going to rename form 1 for in a second or so too. Let's go back to form 1 for a second. From a design perspective, let's change this to the button to call it next button, just to be more accurate. Next button. Oh, next button. So my next button, when I do that, and by the way, my my event handler doesn't change. It's still button 1 click, by the way, right? Because I didn't change it, right? So button 1 click, what it's going to do is it's going to not only show the second form, because the second form already exists. And by the way, I didn't do that whole little alias thing here as well. Here's my public partial class. If I wanted to do the same thing, I could do something like my second form is of type second form, right? So I could say something like, second form. So program got second form. And why is it not working in my class? Oh, maybe I want to make it public or private. So public program dot second form. Why is it not working? What did I do last time? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to rush here, and that's why I am not thinking properly. That's form 1. I did it for form 2, yeah? I did. Form 2, sorry. I made it up, my first form.show. What did I do? Or did I already do it already? Form 1. Or maybe, sorry, I did it for my splash form. Yes, I did. Give me a second, guys. Just want to make sure I get this right for you guys so I don't misinform you, which would be really bad. Yes, so what I meant to do is view code. I do what I did right here, which is public form 1. Okay. Right. Is equal to program.firstForm. All right. So go back and go to my first form, which is form 1. And I'm trying to struggle with this, but it's really this is public. And this would be form 2. Form 2. We'll just call this second form. Second form is equal to program dot second form. That's what I wanted to do. And the reason why this creates a reference, this is the alias for my second form. Alias for second form, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, down here, instead of second form.show, I'm just going to say second form.show, like this. I can reduce the names, make it more friendly for me. Well, what I want to do is I want to access my second form's name object, right? I have a name label that I created. So I can say something like second form dot name label, right? Oh, man, how come I can't access my second form name label? Well, it all comes down to instantiation again, right? Remember that my second form object, let me go back to my second form again, and access, right? My access of my stuff is, it is what it is. So if I go back to form 2, here's my form 2. My name label, my access modifier for this, if I go to my access modifier, I'm just going to go to my application settings for a second. If I want to make this my name label, if I want to make it accessible, I think the modifier would be somewhere public or private or internal. Private. Here it is. Modifiers is private. I'd have to make this modifier public, right? Here's public. So now my name label is public. This is important, right? Save. Go back to my form 1, right? Which is here. And let's try that again. So I want to say something like second form dot. I can see that I have, I want to see my name label. Here's my name label now. I have access to it. Name label dot text is equal to my name label here, name label text, because my name label is, it's called the same thing, but one is my second form name label, and this is my form, my name label. I could have probably called them something different, but same thing. So all I'm doing is I have to make, anytime I want to access an object that exists in another form, I have to make that object, whatever it is, public. Otherwise, it's private. And I can decide which ones are public and private, right? So I can share them between the two classes. Actually, what I'm doing is I'm making public and private properties. They're still properties. It's just one's a public property and one's a private property. Let's run this thing and see what it does now. So here's my name, and if I say something like Tom, and if I click next, then what I'm expecting is that my other thing will come up and, oh man, what happened? It says, use the new keyword to create an object instance, right, of my name label. Well, why did this happen? Remember I talked about instantiation? Let's go back to my program to show you what I'm talking about here. Here's my program. In my first form, in line 23, does my second form even exist yet? No. So if I want to have access to it, it's got to exist first. I know it's weird that I'm putting it in reverse order, but my splash screen needs to know about my first form. My first form needs to know about my second form. My second form might need to know about my third form. You get what I'm saying, right? And on down the line. If I don't do it this way, sometimes, and by the way, this may not fix the problem, but if I don't do it this way, what ends up happening is I don't have the object. And if I don't have the object, I can't access one of its properties because it doesn't exist. Let's try it. So Tom, next, her name. Oh man, what happened? Well, it just says my name. How come I couldn't modify the form? What did it do? I accessed my name and it was already there. How come it didn't change anything? Well, that's because of the way we did it. Let's go back to this and see what I'm talking about here, right? Fine, it'll open, and now it'll access. But the problem is when the form comes up, right, my form comes up, and this is a great idea that I had, my form 1, right? If I go to my form1.cs, to push my name label across, right? But actually what I want to do is I want to pull my name label. Let me show you this as an example. Because of the sequence. I'll go to my form label 2. Now remember, because form label 1, I want to access this thing, this object. I want to go back to my properties here, and I want to make sure that the modifier is public. There it is, public. Okay, now on load, when my next form loads, because I came from here, right, to my form 2, here's my form 2 design. when this thing loads on load, I want to assign the name of my object. So name label dot text is actually equal to form1. And again, I can create that alias here really quickly by doing a public, form1. We'll call it first form, which is equal to program dot first form. Right? We'll make that alias up here. Alias for first form, right? So that way I can access it. I can do something like this. I can say first form dot name label. Man, what happened? Where's my name label? Oh, it's not my name label. It's my text box. Sorry, my text box. Name text box dot text is what equals to my name label. All right, cool. That's what I really want to do, right? Let's run this thing and see what happens. Both ways work, by the way, and I know I made a mistake, but I'll show you. So Tom, I click next, and then when I click next, oh man, what happened? Name label text, first form, name label, ta-da. It says unhandled exceptions, system reference occurred, la la la, in my executional, because it says my object is referenced before calling the method. Man, this is crazy. How come? Solutions. And I know I'm timing out, right? It's always this way. I want to show you more than I can show you, right? Okay, let's take this away for a second, and let's see what I'm doing. It's all about your form event. Before the form has been created, my load, my name label is not created yet, right? And I'm trying to create it, trying to push it to something that doesn't exist, right? Like if I try and render what it is, if I go debug.log, debug.writeLine, and I want to push in the name, what my first form dot text box, first form dot, and my first form dot name text box dot text. If I want to know what that is, right? And by the way, the reason why I can't do this is because I haven't included the systems diagnostic class. If I press plus, so on my form load event, I put in my name, click next, and if I go down to here, it gives me this error. It says I can't get the name of my name text box.text because it says the object reference must not set an instance of an object. So I don't have an instance. Why? It's order again, right? It's the way I'm ordering my data, right? I have to be able to access something that comes from my form. My form is an object, and my object that I'm using right now, which is the text box that exists in the other form, it doesn't have a getter or setter, right? It's not like that. Even though I make it public, I can't access it. If I push it the other way, I had the same problem, right? Because I'm trying to push it to an object that doesn't exist. So I'll leave this form open for a second, then I swear I'll let you go in a second. I swear, until they come busting at my door. If I go back to my form 1, what I was trying to do is on next, when I press the next button, right? I was trying to do the same thing. I was trying to say something like, second form dot label, name label, is equal to my text box. I think I made it wrong this way. That's why it didn't work. Which is the name text box dot text. That's what I really wanted to do. There we go. Well, name text box dot text cannot implicitly convert type string to system.label. Well, because my label is what I forgot to do. There we go. Let's see if that works. Made a mistake. Tom. And click next. No problem, because of the order of events. But now, looking back to where it came from, because the other thing is closed down or hidden, it's not available to me. Right? So I passed one way. When we come back next week, I'll continue to pass data back and forth, because without passing data back and forth from one form to another, it's pretty useless. Can't do much, right? Also, notice one more thing before we go. If I click the exit button here, right, my exit button is going to try and exit the application. And when it exits the application, my first form is already active, right? It's still active in the background. It's just hidden. And I'm going to trigger the closing event of my first form, even though it's hidden. And so it's going to ask me if it's okay. Exit. Are you sure? Because the original form has this sequence inside of it. I can press OK and cancel. If I press cancel, right, it's going to stop this from happening. If I exit and press OK, it's going to close down my application. So I can do it in one place. I don't have to do it as I've done it, like, you know, in every single form. Okay, questions before we go. Remember, assignment number 4 and 5 is due tonight, right, at midnight. 4 was the optional assignment for the arrays, right, and lists. That's what number 4 was. It was optional to give you guys bonus, due tonight, right? If you don't do it, you don't lose anything, but then you don't gain anything, right? 5 is IO. That's due and it's required, and it's due tonight. It's not a lot of points, but it's due tonight as well. And then I think it's next week, right, is your BMI, if I'm not wrong. If it's next week, so I don't know if it's next week or the week after, that you have your BMI application to make, okay? So you have a couple things to do before tonight. Please get it done and hand it in on time so we're good. Thank you so much.